Life on the front lines of American diplomacy.
And we're ready.
And we have Ambassador Christopher Hill. Ambassador Hill, welcome to St. Louis and welcome to Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
First, let's talk with ISIL. And there's thoughts that this came out of the situation in Iraq. There's thoughts that the only reason why we have ISIL is because we broke Iraq. What are your thoughts as you watch this?
Oh, I think it's far more complicated than that. Iraq is on the fault line between Shia and Sunni. I know that sounds like inside baseball for most Americans, but Shia and Sunni is a very powerful split, and Iraq was ruled for years and years by the minority Sunni, and then the Shia come in, and the minority Sunni have never accepted it, and ISIL is an extreme version of the Sunni. And the Shia leadership in Iraq, well, if they had been named Nelson Mandela, maybe it would have been okay, but there's no Nelson Mandela in Iraq, so we have what we have, and we're going to have to sort through this.
The other criticism is that President Obama moved too slowly, and if he would have moved quicker to hurt ISIL earlier, they wouldn't be as powerful as they are now.
Well, you know, I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm not sure everyone's up for another war with U.S. boots on the ground. I really think Americans really want to think twice about getting involved again. I do believe that we need to be engaged. Whether he could have moved faster or not, I'll let the historians sort through that. But clearly we have to be engaged with it. We have to understand that we never, quote, won the war in Iraq. It was never going that well. And so we need to stick with it diplomatically, work with them, do some airstrikes, and see if the Iraqis can sort their way through this.
Ambassador, you say that pulling our troops out of Iraq was an exit strategy gone wrong. Do you believe that still?
I think we were a little too anxious to signal that we wanted those troops out. Now, mind you, I don't think keeping 10,000 American troops would have defeated the problem of ISIL. I think the problem of ISIL is much more internal in Iraq, having to do with disaffected Sunnis and a Shia leadership that hasn't done enough to bring the Sunnis in, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to, say that all depends on U.S. troops, but I think the idea that we wanted out of Iraq certainly was telegraphed a little too strongly to the people there.
Christopher Hill is our guest ambassador and has written a brand new book called Outpost: Life on the Front Lines of American Diplomacy. This book, Ambassador, is getting quite a bit of attention because of your frank discussions and scathing both sides of the aisle.
Well, first of all, I wanted it to be a book about being out there in the outpost rather than being back in the, the mothership of Washington. I think there are a lot of kiss and tell books about Washington that people are free to read, but I wanted to talk about what our diplomats do every day. Whether at one point I'm talking to Mother Teresa, that was truly a pleasure, and then I'm talking to Slobodan Milosevic, an indicted war criminal from Serbia. So I deal with all kinds of people out there, and I think Americans need to understand that if you're going to be involved with the world, you need to deal with some bad guys as well.
Ambassador, what was it like living in North Korea?
Well, I visited there 3 times. I served in South Korea. I negotiated with the North Koreans a lot, along with the Chinese in Beijing. North Korea is kind of the country that time forgot. It's a terrible tragedy. I mean, the Korean people are very, very talented people, and to see 1/3 their number up there in a sort of prison camp is a great tragedy. And this is a leadership. It's kind of a cult dictatorship leadership, and the sooner that country goes away, it'll be better for all of us. So very, very difficult circumstances up there.
Do you think they have nuclear weapons?
They definitely have nuclear weapons. They haven't taken that nuclear material and married it up to a missile, but they will. And so we need to be engaged and somehow stop them. And the trouble is, they're the most heavily sanctioned country in the world. I mean, we go after them all over the world where we can. The problem is to get them to disabuse themselves from this idea of nuclear weapons, and that's something we're going to need help from countries like China to accomplish.
Christopher Hill, our guest. A couple more minutes. The book is called Outpost: Life on the Front Lines of American Diplomacy. Story came out over the weekend in the New York Times that they actually found weapons of mass destruction. They found gas bombs that were deteriorated, in which our soldiers found, and many of them were not using the proper protection. What are your thoughts as you read that story?
Yeah, weapons of mass destruction are generally put in three categories. There's germ warfare, there's chemical warfare, then there's nuclear. What they found were chemical weapons of the kind that we saw in World War I. And from what I read in the New York Times, I would like much more of an explanation of how it was that we were doing the disposal of that. It seems to me we did a much better job of assisting the United Nations in Syria getting rid of those same chemical weapons than we appear to have done in Iraq. Certainly the issue did not come up on my radar screen in '09 and 2010 in Iraq. This was something that went on somewhat earlier, but it is worrisome, and I think we all need to know more about it.
So you're saying that when you read that article in the newspaper, that's the first time you found out about that?
I knew that there had been some chemical weapons found in Iraq. I didn't know that there were these disposal problems as outlined by the New York Times.
Right. Is it a situation? Why was it that we were never told of that until now? Why was that always kept a secret?
I think the military certainly did let the public know that there were some chemical stockpiles there. Chemical stockpiles, not nuclear, but chemical. So the issue that the New York Times appears to have exposed is the idea that we didn't get rid of these in a way that was safe for the people doing it. So again, I can't speak to whether the articles are accurate, but I certainly would like to hear more about that subject.
We're now arming resistance in Syria. Some people are skeptical about that because isn't it true that ISIL is using some of our weapons that we left in Iraq?
I think you always have a problem in a country where you see a bad guy and you assume there must be a good guy. And often when you see a bad guy, you can often find a worse guy. So you're often dealing not between good and bad, but between bad and worse. And so the question is whether we have a group of people in Syria that we could give weapons to, and we won't see those weapons eventually be used against us or against other people who are closer to us. So I think it is a big problem in Syria. We've already said we're not going to deal with that government, but then when we find out that the worst enemies of that government are, from our point of view, even worse than that government. So this is a tough situation, and we have no apparent allies on the ground in Syria.
Sounds to me like you're not a fan of arming the resistance in Syria.
I think it's fraught with a lot of problems, and when you look at the history of it, it's a subject where we are not particularly good at that. We're good at a lot of things, and maybe picking winners and picking losers is not one of our strong suits.
Ultimately, are there going to be troops on the ground to defeat this ISIL?
I doubt it. I don't think this president's up for that. I don't think any of the candidates that whose names I've heard for the next president would be up for putting boots on the ground. When you put boots on the ground, when you put men and women in harm's way in a place like that, you're really in for a long-term game, and I'm not sure the American people are up for that.
The book is called Outpost: Life on the Front Lines of American Diplomacy. Ambassador Christopher Hill, thank you for your candor and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
731, Big 550, Kate.